Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today's video is essentially going to be a review of my 5 motif Alhambra Guilloche Bracelet from Cleef Arpels, which I have on right here. And usually when I plan out a video for my channel, I put together a summary first, kind of like a list of talking points so I know what to say in my video. And as I was writing down, these talking points for this video, I realized that most of what I have to say is actually negative. So I decided to kind of pivot this video a little bit and talk about the reasons why you shouldn't get this bracelet. But at the same time, I do think this bracelet is really pretty and I am glad that I have it in my collection. So this hopefully can help you guys figure out if it's worth getting for yourself. Do the pros, or one pro I should say, which is that the bracelet is really pretty, does that outweigh the cons for you? And I think this is important to have this video out here because not all reviews are positive. I think usually the reviews on my channel at least are mostly positive. Like, I do think there are more pros than cons. This is kind of the opposite, but I think it's equally important. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and let's get into it. Okay, so I first want to elaborate a little bit more on why I do like this bracelet, and I am happy that I have it in my collection. And as I mentioned before, this bracelet is really pretty. I love those guilloche motifs. They are so shiny. It just reflects light so well. And it is quite a unique design for those motifs individually. And when you're paying for designer branded fine jewelry, a lot of that value, a lot of the price is due to the brand name itself. But at least for me personally, it makes me feel better about my purchase if the design is unique. And a lot of times with these designer branded fine jewelry, the designs aren't that unique at all. Like for example, tennis bracelets, you can get that easily at like a local fine jewelry store. There's no reason to necessarily go to a place like Tiffany's or Cartier, for example. But for something like this, I do feel like you are getting something that's unique to Cleef Arpels with these guilloche motifs. So that's kind of the extent of the positives of this bracelet. Now moving on to kind of like the cons, the negative parts of this bracelet. And the first thing I'm going to talk about is the fact that this bracelet basically leaves imprints of the clover motifs on your arm. So basically whenever you lift up your arm like this, the bracelet will slide and kind of like mold to the shape of your arm, and the longer you leave it up like this, the deeper those imprints are. The whole beaded border of these Alhambra motifs is basically imprinted onto your arm, and every time the bracelet shifts a little bit, the imprints will be elsewhere. So sometimes your arm is just left with all these like dots that are imprinted on it. And that is just really strange to me, honestly. And of course, that is not something that is unique to this guilloche motif specifically. I'm sure that all of the Alhambra bracelets will do something similar. The other thing is that this bracelet is just really hard to put on. And sometimes it's hard to take off too, because this clasp is not the easiest to work with. So this is actually something that a lot of people mention as a con for their Alhambra bracelets, not necessarily this guilloche one. So this, because it is a little bit loose on your arm, but it's not supposed to be like crazy loose, it's quite hard to put on. And there are some kind of like DIY tricks you can use to help you. For example, you can tape like one end of it to your arm, and that's supposed to help. Or you can loop a string through the hoop at the end, hold on to it with your fingers, and that also helps for some people. Those have never helped me personally. It doesn't make it any easier than if I were to just struggle putting this on as is. And the reason is, for me at least, if I show you guys the end with the clasp right here, that little chain is so short, and then you're already at where the first motif is. So when you're trying to maneuver this little chain along with the clasp to hook on to the other end, that motif basically gets in the way. Something about this motif being there just doesn't allow you to kind of twist it as necessary, because you're kind of holding on to the motif, and sometimes you need to like swivel this clasp a little bit to help you get it onto the other end. And that, coupled with the fact that this clasp is not the easiest to work with, I don't know, it's just really frustrating. And sometimes it takes me up to like 5 minutes to put this bracelet on, and that is just way too much time for me to spend on putting on a bracelet like on an everyday basis. Luckily, this bracelet is not something that I wear every day. Those are other cons about this bracelet that doesn't make this a piece that I would recommend for like your first bracelet fine jewelry purchase. And usually I do have to ask my husband to put this on for me, because if I'm in a hurry, which I'm not the most punctual person in the world, I just don't have time to be struggling with putting this bracelet on. I have better things to do with my time. And this is even frustrating for my husband to help me put on, because even he sometimes struggles to help me put this on. So yeah, I think that is definitely a big con to this bracelet. That in itself might be a deal breaker for you. And next, I want to move on to talking about why this piece isn't something that I would wear on a daily basis. It's really only something that I use on special occasions when I know I'm not going to be banging my arm against random things. Like even if I'm going grocery shopping, you know, sometimes when I'm reaching for stuff on the shelves, it could scratch this. And because this is this really shiny texture on the surface of the motifs, if you got a scratch on it that was against the kind of lines on these motifs, it would be so noticeable. Luckily for mine, I don't have any scratches on it just yet. I'd imagine that it would eventually happen. I mean, the good thing is because you do have that kind of beaded border, that is raised a little bit, so the really shiny parts of these motifs, it's not right at the surface. Again, not the most carefree thing. Not to mention that this bracelet does collect dust really easily. Even right now, I can see so much dust on there as I'm looking at the motifs to see if there's any scratches. If that is something that bothers you, this will not be something that you will enjoy looking at, because you know, it's like on your arm. You're going to see this so often. In that case, maybe like a necklace is better, or like earrings, but at the same time, you don't get to admire the shine on these guilloche motifs on those pieces. And as a side note, that's also why I'm not super interested in getting like the matching earrings or the matching necklace. Yeah, it's because this is only as pretty as it is because I can see it. If I can't see it, then there's really no point for me. And the next few points I want to talk about are related to how to wear this bracelet. If you should stack it with your other bracelets, if you should have the length shortened to the size of your wrist, if you should wear it with a dangling motif. And I'll kind of tackle that in the order that I just mentioned. So whether to wear this with other bracelets you own, for me personally, I would never wear this with anything else, and I wouldn't recommend that you do it either, because as I mentioned, these motifs could get scratched, and I think you're going to be pretty upset if it does, due to wearing it with your other bracelets, because that is, you know, something that is easily avoidable. And the second thing I mentioned is resizing this to the size of your wrist. So Van Cleef & Arpels is able to shorten it as you want to. If you go into their boutiques, they have these sizer bracelets that you can try on to see which size is best for you. For mine, I had it shortened by 6 links, and my wrist is approximately about 14 centimeters in circumference. And for me personally, I usually like things to be like symmetrical, which 6 links between 4 spaces, 4 parts of the chain, that's obviously not symmetrical. And when I'm looking at it just laid out like this, I can see that it's not symmetrical, and it does kind of bother me. Luckily on my arm, I don't really notice it. So there is that kind of silver lining, but at the same time, I wish I could choose where I wanted the links to be removed from. So the way they do it is, at least for mine, when I got 6 links removed, so between the 2 motifs that are on the ends, they took out 2 links each, and then the middle ones, they took out 1 link. And if I could choose where to have them taken out, I would have that reversed. So I would want more links removed from the center and less from the sides. So I kind of, I don't understand why they can't do it according to what the customer wants. So that is personally a con for me too. And the last thing I want to mention is that some people like to keep the length of the bracelet as it is instead of shortening it to their wrist, because, for example, some people like to buy like the necklaces, and they want to connect this to the necklace to make like a longer necklace. And if you shorten this, then the spacing is going to look really off next to a necklace. So some people like to just keep it at the normal length that it's sold as, and they would wear this with a dangling motif. So let me hook this on for you guys just to show you guys what it looks like if you do that. But as I mentioned, I wouldn't really recommend it because, as I keep saying, it could scratch. And so basically what it would look like, I mean, this looks like it's made for like a newborn's wrist, but you have this kind of dangling motif right there, and that is going to scratch for sure, because that's going to hit against anything you touch. So I wouldn't recommend that. And not to mention, I also think this looks really strange because you do have that little bit of the chain dangling at the end. I mean, that's an aesthetics thing, so if you don't mind that, then go for it. But still, I wouldn't recommend it for the guilloche one specifically. If you wanted to do that for, like some of the hardier stones that they offer for this bracelet, then go ahead. But do keep in mind that doing something like this makes the bracelet even harder to put on. Before I got this bracelet resized, I actually tried that out. And the thing is, you kind of have to hook the end just like over the chain. So there's not any specific hoop that you can hook it onto. So this actually slides around. And I find that this is harder to put on, even if the bracelet is looser, compared to just hooking it on as normal on a bracelet that is sized for your arm. And as I mentioned, it's just so much work to put this bracelet on as it is. Why do I want to add even more work to that? So yeah, not recommended once again. And that is actually the extent of this review. Those are all the negatives that I want to mention for this bracelet. There is a lot of them, but as I said before, I do think this bracelet is really pretty. I am glad that I have it in my collection, but this is kind of like an outlier. If you were to ask me if I would buy another 5 motif Alhambra bracelet, like for example, would I buy the 5 motif mother of pearl bracelet? And the answer is probably not. It's just not unique enough for me to deal with all these little annoyances with this 5 motif bracelet. And yes, not all of the cons that I listed about this guilloche motif one applies to the mother of pearl, but mother of pearl comes with its own set of limitations. Like, you can't get it wet, you could ruin the finish if you got lotion or like perfume or something on it, and you can't clean it easily. You have to bring it to the boutique, whereas something like this, I could just clean it at home. So I think it really depends which version of the bracelet you get, what stone you get, what type of metal you get, whether it's pave or not. I think that even though I said I am glad that I have this guilloche 5 motif Alhambra bracelet in my collection, that would not apply to every single version of this bracelet that they make. So I hope this video was helpful for you guys, especially if you have your eye on this exact same bracelet. But even if you're thinking of purchasing the 5 motif Alhambra bracelet in a different variation instead, I hope this video gives you guys the information that you need to decide if it would be a worthwhile purchase or not. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please do consider subscribing for new videos every single week on luxury and fashion. And I will leave 2 videos on the screen for you to watch next, so I'll see you very soon. Bye for now.